Welcome to Essential Dynamics. I'm Derek Hudson. I'm the developer of Essential Dynamics and creator of the podcast. And I'm grateful to have my colleague Dave Kane from Unconstrained back on Essential Dynamics podcast for yet another episode. Dave, thanks so much for joining today.
It's just my pleasure. How are you doing today, Derek? A little frog in your throat.
Yeah, I just got to get that out and then turn my brain on and let's have some deep conversations.
All right. So what I'm bringing today, and I'm going to hijack the question here and take it in a different direction. With Essential Dynamics in the podcast and a lot of the clients I know you work with, Derek, it's usually an established company that has a fairly entrenched system. And we've been working with them, trying to help them understand it, improve it, and sort of take the organization where they feel it can go, get it unstuck, do all these cool things. I would say more often than not, when people start up these conversations with me, it's when they're in a very early stage of their company. They're startups, they're innovators, they're trying to commercialize their first piece. So they don't really have a system yet. And they're trying to figure out, do I need to focus on the system? How do I apply these types of pieces? So I kind of want to just take our conversations we've had and change the focus or change the lens on it to sort of say, how do you apply this or advise this towards somebody who's very early on in the process? So if you got any initial thoughts on that, let's hear it, and then I'll got a few questions for you.
Well, that's a great question, and it's come up recently in a couple of different directions. And I haven't given it much thought, so we're going to do this live in front of our podcast audience. But I do have a lot of experience in advising startups, mostly as volunteer. So I work with the Threshold Impact Venture Mentoring Service with the University of Alberta. So there's a plug for that. And then I also work with Innovation Masterminds Edmonton, or IMYEG, as a volunteer. And in both of those cases, I typically am working with a panel of mentors and entrepreneurs that are in pretty early stages. I also have clients and pro bono relationships with people who are starting out businesses who like to talk to me as well. And I think that the principles are all applicable, and there are things that you can do as you build your business that will let you move into a system instead of the sort of reclamation work that we sometimes do, where there's a system, no one can describe it. It's not flowing, and we have to do some hard work to change some things. I love that work. But wow, if you can have in mind some of these key principles as you're building a business, all the better. So let's maybe just discover.
Okay. So I think that the first starting point for me is, as an entrepreneur or in the startup phase, you don't need to be focused on what is my system. That's not what you have the time for, because you're moving along quite quickly, trying to get revenue to stay alive. So going in with your approach of, I got to build a system so I can have my small business succeed, probably isn't the right place to start. But I think it's the Essential Dynamics principles, to me, that's where you start.
Well, I've seen some maybe over optimistic or over ambitious entrepreneurs start to build systems too soon. And so they invest in technology or maybe hire too many people or something like that. The business doesn't come as fast, or it goes a different direction, and now you don't have the right system. So there's
true, and I've heard a lot of people who've experienced it and gone through it sort of say, when you are designing it, you have to design it in your head for when you're at scale.
That's right.
So that you're not re-engineering this. But I don't think. I mean, to me, that's the other form of system of what is the software I'm bringing in to make things work. When we're talking more about the systems of how the pieces interrelate, I think that's still fundamental to this.
So let's use this conversation as well then to revisit Essential Dynamics just the basic pieces of it. So the first thing about Essential Dynamics is it's based on this idea of being on an epic quest. And of course, epic quests are hard and you have all kinds of unexpected challenges and you might get hurt. So that's one side of it. And then the other side is, but you're doing it for this high, noble purpose. And that's sort of the best way to look at entrepreneurship is people step into it because there's something that they really want to accomplish and they know it's going to be hard and they're excited about the challenge.
As you're saying that, because I know we've talked about this a lot, and that's what was the flow of it. I mean, you're on this epic quest that's hard, but you're energized and you have this great motivation. And those are the ingredients to have flow. And you look at entrepreneurs, and when they get into it and they get working so hard, they got flow. They find their groove for sure.
There's a lot of opportunities for that, full immersion in a real challenging topic, challenging problem where you're all in and the outcome is really important and you can just kind of invest everything in it. So there's a lot to that. And then that, I guess, legitimizes the connection between being an entrepreneur and looking at the other parts of Essential Dynamics, because it's one thing to try and get a middle manager to see the quest that their organization is on and that they're on. That's a process that we've done, but you don't have to instill that into the entrepreneur. It's now where it's like, how do we use that? And how do we help, that energy and willingness to do hard things? So we start in Essential Dynamics and with purpose. And it's not just purpose, it's purpose X and purpose Y. And I think there's a couple of things there that really come to play. One of them is, this is a fundamental decision you have to make as an entrepreneur. And that is, are you an entrepreneur because you're trying to make money? Are you an entrepreneur because you have this thing to offer the world? And there are both kinds. And you have to figure out which kind you are. At the beginning of COVID, I talked to a lot of business owners, and a lot of people were really unsure about where their business was going to go. And I kind of saw that some of them were business people that had a particular business. And if that didn't work out, they would be okay because they would go find a different business. And then there are other people who were craftsmen, professionals. And I'm not saying that was their occupation, but their mindset was, I have this thing I do that the world needs. And I will figure out a way to offer it to the world as a business owner, an employee, a partner, volunteer, whatever. This is the thing that has to come out of me. And those, I think, are different. And entrepreneurs need to kind of figure out what really drives them. But then I think in each case, you have to find that tension. And so your purpose Y compared to your purpose X might be the opposite. So for example, if you want to start a business because you're very passionate about the product that you offer, and you love the qualities of the product, you're very creative and you pour your heart and soul into that, that might be a good purpose X. Purpose Y might be, and you have to make money at it if you want to continue it, or if you want to expand it. Or if you're more of a wheeler dealer and you're like, well, this is an arbitrage opportunity. I can buy low here and sell high over there. Yeah, sure, you might make money doing that. But why this one? And why? How can you connect with customers and employees if it's just about flipping something? So what is it that there's a sense of purpose that you can take beyond the deal?
Yeah, I think the piece I'm taking away from that as well, though, is a lot of people when they look at being the entrepreneur, as you sort of say, they sort of say, "Am I this or am I that?" And it's after you've self-labeled yourself, you have to stop and recognize there is a purpose X and a purpose Y. You cannot only be one and be successful, I don't think. Because if you are that artisan who, just loves to get this piece out into the public for them to enjoy without the other purpose there of, and I have to be able to make money at this if I want to keep doing it, And it's finding the balance and the tension in there. But to me, the purpose X, purpose Y, and having that clarity at the front is such a touchstone for the entire entrepreneurial journey. It helps so many decisions down the line
Oh,
by
absolutely.
sort of having the clarity of with yourself of what those two are.
Yeah, and the confidence in them so that you can explain them to people that you know you're trying to help or that you're trying to get to help you, including investors, employees, customers. Look, this is why we're here, and you don't have to apologize
Mhm.
because you're so settled on it. Now, the other thing I would say about purpose is, as an entrepreneur starting a business, there's what you want to do, and then there's what someone out there needs as a customer. And so as soon as you get clear on kind of where you want to go, now you have to go on the other side of the table and say, and get really empathetic with your customer, your potential customer. What's their purpose? What's their purpose X, purpose Y? What would my product offering mean to them? And there's a lot of, helps for entrepreneurs where they talk about that. But let's patch that into our model and think, well, you've got a purpose X, a purpose Y. Your customer has a purpose X, purpose Y. When they all line up, now we're creating value.
Mhm. That's what I was going to say. That's where you're bringing in the value, and you're starting to move towards the path piece of the purpose path and people.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to create value, you need a system for creating value. We call it value creation system, and that's the path. That's the journey that you take.
Right, but you don't need to stop and sit down and draw out your system and all the pieces and do the analysis on it. I think to me that comes in time as it evolves, but it's understanding that value and how you create value and how you give value to your customer. You are creating your system then. You're creating a
Yeah,
value creation system without stopping and defining it that way.
absolutely. And I've seen a lot of pitches where that's just plain not clear. And either it's not clear because we've got this product, but you can't say how that sort of new angle on that particular product category it makes your customers any better off than they already are with what they're using. Or you can't say, this is how I'm going to create that product, and this is how I'm going to create it in a way that others haven't. And so I'm going to have some kind of competitive advantage. Like if everyone's in the industry is taking the same inputs and making the same outputs and using a similar process, then you're in I don't know, a battle for cost or, customer service or something like that. And you're in a commodity market and it's really hard. So you want to look for that unique thing. And it's going to be a combination of the offering and the value that the customer gets and the way you deliver it. And a lot of times I don't see any thought given to that. And so, yeah, we have this great idea and we're just going to offshore all the production and stuff like that and have commission sales. And
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times it sort of starts with, oh, I see a market demand. I'm going to go fill it. There's
yeah,
an opportunity there. And it's like, okay, but pause and also figure out how am I generating value in that process? Because you're going to want to be able to understand that as you go find and sell to your customer, but you really want to be able to articulate how you're generating value to your investor, or whoever's going to seed you later on.
yeah. And so, for example, these days, everything is software as a service. And, what we're looking for is recurring revenue and customer retention. And those are important things. And well, wouldn't everyone love to have a product where if you make a sale once, then people send you money every month forever? So that's a model, but then you have to say, and what do we have that's special and unique to introduce to that? Because uh, as much innovation as we see, coding is coding. And if you say, well, I'm matching this to that, and well, that's not that unique. So what's going to protect you. If you prove to the world that that's a lucrative business to be in, you'll get squeezed out if you don't have if you don't understand how you sort of uniquely create value. And I'm not saying that you have to have that all figured out before you do anything. And that this idea of putting a minimum viable product out there and learning from it, I think that's very powerful. But it's not just the features in the product. You also have to look at how do we create this? How do we deliver the value to the customer? And as you say, that system then forms as you think about that.
Well, yeah, because if you stop to sort of say, how am I generating value and what is the value to the customer, but then how am I generating it? You start to focus in on, okay, what are the key pieces of that value creation? What are the key inputs into it? What's the magic sauce inside the black box? And it allows you to focus on what's important. And unknowingly, you're building your system, you're defining it, you're focusing on the driver and the constraint almost.
Yeah, and then you say, well, what's important, and then you say what's hard.
Yeah,
like what's hard about turning these inputs into that outputs, and what has the industry not been able to solve? Why don't people already have this, and why don't they have an infinite amount of it? And then what can we do at that key point to do it that much better? I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but we talk about startups, but every startup wants to become a scale up, which I think is just labels that just get thrown around and not necessarily understood that well. But if your goal is to have that impact either in helping the world or financial returns, then being bigger is usually an indication that you're doing better at that. But how do you scale? And if the key operation in your value add process is something that's not easy to scale, you're going to have a difficult time scaling your business.
I agree. Okay, so here's a question for you. So many of the startups that I've been working with, the drive is for revenue. We're minimum viable product. We've got to do what we can to get out there and get our first revenue to survive in a lot of cases. How important is it with that focus with the building the process along the way? Because we've talked about it's the process, not the outcome, but outcome or survival. How do you find that balance?
That's an excellent question. So first of all, I would say good for you, because there is a subset of the startups who don't think revenue is the key, and they're more interested in cash, and they get excited about non-dilutive funding, which is grants, and dilutive funding, which is additional investors, and maybe somewhere along the line, some borrowing of some kind. The problem with those is that you're convincing someone to give you money. And if they give you money, there's no indication that your customers are going to think you're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. So for an investor, you say, if you give me money, someday you can convince someone else that I'm worth more than you paid me. Sometimes that works out really well for lots of people. Sometimes the second or third buyers in get at the peak and never see the value. So that's, there's maybe a speculative part of that. But what I'm really interested in is if you get money from a customer, that's honest money. I'm not saying that the others is dishonest, but there's information that comes with that money. You can value that information more because they're buying your product for the value your product provides. Well, that's you're right. Really good information.
Feedback. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of the innovation and the tech side that when they do get these non-dilutive funding, they have the luxury of focusing on the process first. Mm-hmm. And then they kick it into gear and go chase the revenue. And I guess maybe there's a bit of a chicken and an egg here of which one you go for first. My question was kind of like, how do you find the balance? So, because I mean, in both instances, you're hyper focused on one or the other when you do need to be finding a balance.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I talked about that experience at Microline, where the stuff that we made, we didn't have the process nailed down. So I don't think we got the balance right. I mean, I think we got better at it over time. You know, if you can make something once and then you have to make it again, um, it's it's hard to replicate the craftsmanship at scale, and so now you don't have a scalable process. Mm. And so there's things like designing for manufacture. So that's a specific part of design that if you were in physical products, I'm going to design this product for two things. One, for utility for the customer, and the other is I'm going to design it so that it can be manufactured. Toyota did something probably 40 years ago where they reduced the number of components. There's, 5 sizes of bolts on a Toyota, a 1990 Toyota compared to 27 on a General Motors vehicle or something like that. Like it's no more expensive to design for manufacture if you do it while you're designing. Mm-hmm. And then you build it the process in. So there's that mindset for sure. I would say the other thing is with this minimum viable product idea, you want to standardize and modularize and do short loop experiments and only change the thing that you need to change. And that helps you control the process as well. And again, that's part of the mindset. And then there's times when you have a demanding customer and they want custom work. And you have to ask yourself, if we get this revenue stream and then we backfill the process, and we'll be so focused on it because we'll know what the customer wants. And I think that is a good recipe for growth, but you have to be very deliberate and know the risks of doing that.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. Yeah. Those were the thoughts on my mind of the experimentation and also that pursuit of first revenue at all costs without sort of thinking, okay, how do I get the 10th one?
Yeah.
Because if I haven't built the process or haven't built a product behind it that I can find other applications for, you got too distracted by the first one.
Yeah, that's right. So we're moving in on time here, Dave, and I think if we want to treat this properly, we should talk about the people side too.
We got to hit the people because that's the one I was thinking doesn't get enough attention. The startups that I've sort of worked with and seen, everybody's driving so hard. People are they're all in. Everybody they're working for them is all in, and eventually they don't burn out, but they certainly create a lot of stress in there. And I don't think it gets enough consideration of those two elements of people. What does the individual need from the group, and what does the group need from the individual? And even just a bit of thought to that through what you're asking them to do for you, I think is valuable in the end.
Absolutely. So, if we think about the typical sort of type A personality single entrepreneur who hires a team, there's a big distinction between the commitment and drive and buy-in of the owner and everybody else. And sometimes you bridge that with things like stock options and equity plans and stuff like that. That's never enough. I'm not saying you need more stock options. You need some other connections to the business. And so this idea of shared purpose really helps. And so if you have your purpose X and your purpose Y, and one of them, and we don't say which is which, one of them is to make the entrepreneur a lot of money, that doesn't translate well to the team. They don't care. But the purpose, and that financial purpose could be expanded, because I've had clients who say our sort of goal on that side is financial capacity for our family and our work family. Mm-hmm. The people can buy into that. And then the other one that's sort of save the world purpose. Well, yeah, that's pretty cool. And there's other purposes we've talked about, sort of being on the team or being part of a challenge or doing excellent work and learning and stuff like that. They can all be part of it, but that has to be designed in as deliberately as the production system.
Yeah. Well, I think
And
that's the thing is it's all when we go back to purpose, path, and people, they're not siloed; they're a system, and so bringing your purpose and your process into how you're viewing the people and how they're engaged in the organization is absolutely critical. Because yeah, I've seen organizations where it's almost become a bit of a co-op where it's the paramount thing is making sure everybody within the organization is financially fine, and they get lost on the other part of the purpose, or they ask too much of the individual contributing to that as opposed to what are you giving back to the individual as you go. And so it's just it doesn't get the attention I don't think that it needs through the evolution of this.
yeah, so if you're on a quest and you have this, lofty vision of really changing the world with your product and creating this wake of value that spreads everywhere. Because you think about it, a really high performing business takes care of its owners and its employees and its suppliers, and the customers are getting more value. So that's all covered if you do that. If that's what you want to do as an entrepreneur, from day one, you have to be thinking, what's our system for adding the value, and how do our people fit into this? Because the people are going to make it happen, and it's going to get bigger than the entrepreneur pretty fast.
But there's also how many times have you come across the small businesses where the owner or the central figure is key to the value, and they can't sell it because they have to go with it.
Well, they're key to the value, and they're 100% the limiting factor of the potential of the organization.
Yeah. And if you didn't build the people up properly from the beginning, you're building a system that limits its value because you're the center of it.
Yeah. So one of the things we say on the podcast is that we test the ideas of essential dynamics through conversations. And so in this conversation, we've tested essential dynamics at the very beginning of the creation of a company, and I think it's holding up. So
it does, and I think anytime I've gotten into a conversation with people, it's the very fundamental ones of your purpose. Be clear on your purpose X, purpose Y at the beginning. Be clear on how you're generating value, and be clear on the relationship with your people. And if you take care of those, you are going to become and grow into these organizations that we're talking about that have these, well understood and well functioning systems.
And then you'll get flow. Dave, that was a fantastic summary. So I think we have to cut it off there. We're at time as well. Thanks so much for the conversation. And to all our friends who are starting businesses, who are in a startup that's 5, 10, 15, 20 years old, because there's lots of those, where you're thinking about it, use these principles. And if you want to discuss more offline, please reach out. We're at getunconstrained.com. Thanks, Bryn Griffiths, for all the value you create in a unique way, Bryn. Well, thanks so much for that. And until next time, everyone, consider your quest.